She was just a maid, humiliated in a five-star lobby, invisible to everyone. But when she whispered one sentence in perfect German, a billionaire froze. That moment exposed a secret and started a spiral of jealousy, betrayal, and a revenge no one expected. The white marble of the lobby reflected the cold glow of the crystal chandelier. The sweet scent of artificial flowers mixed with the heavy perfumes of rushing guests. Rosanna, on her knees, rubbed the cloth against an already spotless floor. Her fingers were raw, and her knees burned as if carrying the weight of all the years life had stolen from her. Valeria's voice cut through the space like a knife. "Stupid girl. This maid doesn't even know how to clean. Look at that stain." She pointed to a spot that didn't exist. People around stopped for a moment. A French couple exchanged uneasy looks. A child clutched her mother's hand, curious. Others pretended not to notice, as if avoiding involvement. Rosanna kept her eyes down. "I'm sorry, Ms. Valeria. I'll clean it again." Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. Valeria was 45. Her hair pulled back so tightly it seemed to stretch her skin. She fed on humiliation the way others breathe air. Each order, each insult made her feel stronger. Rosanna scrubbed harder, though the marble already shone. The wet rag slipped between her fingers, leaving behind the acrid smell of chemicals. Amidst the sound of heels and rolling suitcases, Julia, a housekeeper, walked past with a stack of towels. She glanced at Rosanna and whispered quickly, "Hold on, Ro. Break time's near." But Valeria heard the murmur. "Julia, stop gossiping and get back to work." The sharp tone echoed through the lobby. Julia walked on but gave Rosanna a discreet wink. 3 years of this routine. 3 years of crowded buses before dawn. 3 years of insults, glares, and exhaustion. At 26, Rosanna already carried the bent posture of someone who had lost too many battles. But she had no choice. Alice, her 10-year-old daughter, needed school, food, a roof over her head. Valeria tapped her heel against the floor, ending the spectacle. "Enough. Go to the 3rd floor. We have a very important guest in the presidential suite." Rosanna stood slowly, her legs trembling, the rag damp in her hand. "Yes, ma'am." Valeria leaned closer, her coffee-stained breath brushing Rosanna's face. "If you make the slightest mistake, you're out. This guest is a German billionaire. Either you clean perfectly or you pack your things." Rosanna nodded. She could feel the pitying eyes of her coworkers follow her to the elevator. The doors closed with a metallic thud. For a moment, silence. Rosanna breathed deeply, pushing back the knot in her throat. At the municipal school, Alice was probably copying math problems, unaware her mother was being humiliated at that very moment. The elevator climbed slowly to the 3rd floor. When the doors opened, the contrast was almost painful. The hallway was hushed, the air conditioner humming steadily. Persian rugs muffled footsteps. Original paintings lined the walls, each frame gleaming. Everything smelled of wealth. Rosanna paused before a gilded mirror. The reflection made her sigh. A faded blue uniform, hair tied carelessly, deep shadows under her tired eyes. At 26, she looked closer to 35. She straightened her apron and walked toward the suite's door. A golden plaque gleamed under the soft light. She knocked gently. "Housekeeping." Silence. No answer. With steady hands, she used the master key and pushed the door open. The sight stole her breath. The suite was another world. Leather sofas, a dining table for 8, silk curtains, a king-sized bed with linen sheets. The marble bathroom was larger than her entire living room. The balcony offered a sweeping view of the city. For a moment, Rosanna forgot her aching knees and Valeria's voice. "Oh my God," she whispered. She pushed the cart inside, feeling the thick carpet under her worn shoes. Here, alone, she allowed herself to dream for a few seconds. What would it be like to live in this world? To be respected, To sleep without fear of being late, without hiding tears in the staff bathroom? She sighed, straightened her shoulders, and began cleaning. First the cushions already in place. Then the coffee table, where papers and a pen rested. Among them something caught her eye, a book. A blue cover, worn edges, golden letters on the spine.
Der kleine Prinz.
Rosanna picked it up carefully, her hands trembling. She opened it, pages filled with notes. Reading softly, with her heavy accent, she whispered,
Was wesentlich ist, ist für die Augen unsichtbar.
What is essential is invisible to the eyes. A shiver ran through her. It was like finding a forgotten part of herself. She didn't know, in that instant, that she was holding the key that would change the course of her life. And outside the door, footsteps were approaching. The presidential suite was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. Rosanna placed the book back on the table, her hands still trembling. She ran her fingers across the faded cover, as if touching a part of herself she had hidden for years. For a moment, she wasn't a maid. She was a young girl again, sitting in the municipal library with an old dictionary in hand, trying to decipher strange words that sounded like music. At 15, she had discovered German by accident. A film on public television about World War II had caught her attention. The harsh, rhythmic sound of the language fascinated her. Soon, she was borrowing books, scribbling notes, and repeating phrases under her breath when no one was listening. That was when she met Helga, a German woman who had emigrated to Brazil decades earlier. Helga offered free lessons at the library twice a week. Rosanna became her most dedicated student. You have a good ear, menina, Helga often said in her broken Portuguese. But the Brazilian accent, this you will never lose, and that is beautiful. It means you belong to two worlds. Rosanna had dreamed big back then. University, literature, translation, maybe even teaching German one day. She wanted to see castles, snowy mountains, the rivers that ran through poems she struggled to read. But life had other plans. At 16, she fell for João, a 19-year-old mechanic with a charming smile and too many promises. When she told him she was pregnant, he vanished. By the time her belly showed, her parents, strict, religious, unforgiving, threw her out. You've shamed us, her father had said. It was her grandmother, Dona Maria, who opened the door, offering warmth and safety. For 5 years, Dona Maria raised Alice alongside Rosanna. But when she passed away, leaving only a small apartment behind, Rosanna's fragile dreams crumbled. She left school, left German, left behind the girl who had once believed in more. Now, standing in the luxury of the suite, holding Der kleine Prinz, she felt all those years rush back. Her heart ached, but also, strangely, there was hope. Maybe her dream wasn't entirely dead. She returned the book to its place and resumed cleaning. Yet this time, there was a soft smile on her face. Then came the sound of keys rattling at the door. Voices in the hallway. One of them was unmistakable, Valeria's syrupy, fake politeness. Mr. Claus, what an honor to have you here. Rosanna froze, her heart hammered. The guest had arrived, and she was still in the middle of her work. Another voice answered, deep and accented. Thank you. I only need a quiet place to work until tomorrow. German. The tone carried exhaustion, like someone who hadn't slept well in days. Panic surged through Rosanna. If Valeria found her still inside, touching the guest's belongings, she would be fired instantly. She pushed the cleaning cart toward the closet, trying to slip inside. The heavy carpet snagged one wheel. The cart jerked, rattling loudly. Damn it, she whispered. The door opened. Klaus Hoffmann entered, a leather briefcase in one hand, his phone in the other. He was tall, mid-30s, his navy suit tailored to perfection. His dark hair was touched with gray at the temples, but what stood out most were his eyes, tired, sad, carrying the weight of something unspoken. He stopped when he saw her. Oh, I didn't know someone was still cleaning. Rosanna flushed, heat rising to her cheeks. I'm sorry, sir, I'll be finished in a minute. He set down his case and waved lightly. No need to rush. Please, continue. Rosanna nodded, trying to make herself invisible. She dusted the shelves, straightened the pillows, all the while aware of his presence. Klaus moved to the desk, pulling out papers. His hands trembled slightly as he flipped through them. He muttered in English, his tone sharp with frustration. Where is that contract? I need everything before tomorrow. He opened the briefcase too quickly, and the contents exploded across the room, papers flying like white confetti over the carpet. Rosanna instinctively dropped her cloth and crouched down, gathering sheets. Careful, sir, these look important. He glanced at her, surprised by her composure. Yes, thank you. He muttered again, this time in German. Words spilled fast, almost angry.
Wo sind diese verdammten Verträge aus Frankfurt? Ich brauche sie für das Meeting.
Where are those damn contracts from Frankfurt? I need them for the meeting. Rosanna froze. She understood every word. Her throat tightened. Valeria's warnings echoed in her head. You're here to clean, not to talk. She should stay quiet. She should pretend she understood nothing. But Klaus looked so lost, so close to breaking, that she couldn't stop herself. Softly, hesitantly, she said, Are you searching for a clause amendment, sir? I think I saw one under the chair. Klaus's head snapped up. His eyes widened. You understood me? Color rushed to Rosanna's cheeks. She wished she could vanish. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. No, Klaus interrupted, rising to his feet. How do you know German? Rosanna's heart pounded so hard she thought he might hear it. For years, she had hidden this part of herself. And now, in the middle of the most luxurious room she would ever clean, her secret was uncovered. Before she could answer, the door burst open. Valeria stormed inside, her smile brittle. Rosanna, why are you still here? You're disturbing our guest. Klaus glanced between them, suspicion flickering in his eyes. And for the first time in years, Rosanna wondered if her hidden past could also become her salvation. Valeria's heels clicked sharply against the marble as she strode into the suite. Her false smile was wide, but her eyes burned with fury. Mr. Hoffman, I hope everything is to your satisfaction. Klaus looked at her, then back at Rosanna, who was frozen by the closet with papers in hand. Yes, everything is fine, he said slowly. Your maid was just helping me gather some documents. Valeria's eyes narrowed. That won't be necessary. Rosanna, leave at once. You're done here. Rosanna lowered her head, heart sinking. She placed the last papers on the desk and whispered, Excuse me, sir. She pushed her cart toward the door, but Klaus's voice stopped her. Wait, Rosanna, is it? She turned, startled that he remembered her name. Yes, sir. Thank you for your help. It was simple courtesy, but no one had spoken to her like that in years. Her throat tightened. She nodded and slipped out, Valeria close behind. Once the door shut, Klaus leaned against the desk, thoughtful. A maid who understood German? A maid with eyes full of something deeper, intelligence, sadness, maybe both? He rubbed his temples. He was exhausted, yes, but not hallucinating. He had heard her clearly. Outside, in the service hallway, Valeria grabbed Rosanna's arm. What do you think you're doing? She hissed. Talking to a guest? In his language. Rosanna pulled her arm free, though her pulse raced. I was only helping. He dropped the papers. Helping? Valeria's voice dripped venom. Do you think you're special because you can babble a few foreign words? Let me make something clear. That man is a billionaire. You are a maid. Stay away from him, or you'll regret it. Rosanna swallowed her anger. Fighting back would only cost her job. She nodded quietly and wheeled her cart down the hall, her hands trembling on the handle. That night, Klaus couldn't sleep. He had come to Sao Paulo for an important deal, an expansion that could change the future of his family's hotel empire. But his mind wasn't on contracts or meetings. It kept drifting back to the young maid with tired eyes who spoke German as if it were a secret she had carried all her life. By the next evening, curiosity got the better of him. Around 5:30, as the staff began clearing the lobby, he saw Rosanna putting away her cart. She was about to leave when he approached. "Rosanna." She turned quickly, startled. "Yes, sir? Do you need something?" "I was wondering, would you have a few minutes to continue our conversation?" She glanced around nervously. The lobby was nearly empty, Valeria nowhere in sight. Her pulse quickened. "Just for a little while," she whispered. They sat in a quiet corner sofa. Klaus ordered 2 glasses of water from the bar, keeping his tone respectful, distant enough not to frighten her. "How did you learn German?" he asked. For the first time in years, Rosanna allowed herself a small smile. "It's a silly story. I'd like to hear it." She told him everything. The old TV film, the municipal library, the German woman who gave free lessons, the books she read at night when the world was asleep. Her eyes glowed with the memory, as if the mere act of speaking about it reignited something inside. Klaus listened intently. Her fluency wasn't perfect. Her accent was heavy, the grammar sometimes broken, but the passion was unmistakable. He had met countless executives fluent in many languages. None spoke with the kind of sincerity she carried. "And then?" he asked. Her smile faded. "Then life happened. I got pregnant at 16. I had to leave school, leave everything." She paused, lowering her eyes. "Now I just clean rooms." Klaus felt a pang in his chest. "But you still read, don't you?" She looked up, surprised. "How do you know?" "Because when you read German yesterday, you didn't stumble. You've kept practicing." Rosanna hesitated, then nodded. "At night, when Alice is asleep, she doesn't know. I don't want her to ask why her mother works as a maid if she speaks another language." Klaus was silent for a long moment. A mother hiding her intelligence to protect her child from disappointment. It struck him harder than he expected. "Alice is your daughter?" he asked gently. Rosanna's expression softened. "Yes, 10 years old. She's my reason for everything." Klaus leaned back, studying her. She wasn't like anyone he had met in boardrooms or luxury hotels. She was real, raw, unpolished, and yet somehow brighter than all of them. Before he could say more, a child's voice echoed across the lobby. "Mom, where are you?" Rosanna's heart leapt. Alice ran in, backpack bouncing, her eyes curious as they fell on Klaus. "Alice, this is Mr. Hoffman. He's a guest here." Klaus rose and smiled warmly, extending his hand. "Hello, Alice. Your mother has told me a lot about you." Alice shook his hand, wide-eyed. "You talk funny. Where are you from?" "Germany," he replied with a chuckle. "Very far away." The girl's curiosity was immediate. Rosanna, however, felt her chest tighten. This was dangerous, too close, too personal. Yet as she watched Klaus kneel to Alice's level, speaking gently, respectfully, she felt something stir inside her. Something she hadn't allowed herself in years. Hope. And from the shadows of the reception desk, Valeria watched everything. Her fists clenched, jealousy burning like acid. The restaurant of the Hotel Imperator glowed under warm golden lights. Crystal glasses shimmered, and the air carried the faint aroma of roasted garlic and butter. For Rosanna, the space had always been forbidden territory. She had passed its doors hundreds of times, pushing her cleaning cart, but never dared to enter. That night, everything felt different. She wore her best blouse, light blue, and a simple black skirt. Alice held her hand tightly, dressed in a floral dress her late grandmother had given her years ago. The child's eyes widened as they stepped inside. Mom, it looks like a palace. Rosanna nodded, embarrassed by her daughter's excitement. Behave, Alice. This is a fancy place. At the far table, Klaus rose to his feet the moment he saw them. His navy suit was impeccable, but it wasn't the clothes that struck Rosanna. It was the warmth in his smile. You both look wonderful, he said, pulling out their chairs. Alice giggled. You talk different, but I like it. Klaus laughed softly. Different can be good. They settled at the table, and for the first time, Rosanna wasn't a maid serving water or polishing silverware. She was a guest. The waiter approached, placing menus carefully. Rosanna's hands trembled as she held hers. The prices made her throat tighten. How could she possibly let him pay for this? But Klaus's calm expression eased her nerves. Don't worry. Tonight you are my guests, he said gently. Conversation flowed more easily than Rosanna expected. Klaus asked Alice about school. I love math, Alice said eagerly. But Portuguese is boring. Too many rules. In Germany, teachers also get angry about grammar, Klaus replied with a smile. I always preferred literature. Alice tilted her head. Do you have kids? The question hit him like a stone. His expression faltered. No, my wife. She passed away before we could have children. Alice's face softened. I'm sorry. You don't need to be. Life. Sometimes it changes everything. Rosanna watched quietly, her chest aching. The way Klaus spoke, the heaviness in his tone, it wasn't just grief. It was loneliness. As the evening continued, Klaus turned to Rosanna. And you? Do you still read German literature? Her eyes lit up. Yes. Goethe, Schiller, Heine. I've read The Sorrows of Young Werther 5 times. Klaus nearly choked on his wine. 5 times. It's foolish, she said, laughing softly. But I felt close to him. That sadness, that feeling of not belonging anywhere. It made sense to me. Klaus stared at her, astonished. A hotel maid discussing Goethe with passion and depth? It was unlike anything he had ever experienced. For a brief moment, Rosanna forgot the years of humiliation, the nights of exhaustion, the warnings of Valeria. She was simply herself, the young woman who had once dreamed of becoming a teacher, who had devoured books under dim light while her daughter slept. Alice yawned, her head heavy against Rosanna's arm. Klaus smiled. Looks like someone is ready for bed. I'm not sleepy, Alice protested, before yawning again. They all laughed. Rosanna stood, smoothing her skirt. We should go. She has school tomorrow. Klaus rose as well, walking them to the door. He turned to Rosanna, his tone quiet, almost hesitant. Thank you for tonight. It was special. Her heart fluttered. She lowered her gaze, unsure how to respond. Thank you too, sir. Alice hugged him suddenly, surprising both adults. Best dinner ever. Thank you, Mr. Klaus. Klaus froze, then gently patted her back, his throat tightening. For years he had been surrounded by wealth, power, endless meetings. But at that moment, with a little girl's arms around him and Rosanna's shy smile nearby, he felt something he hadn't in a long time. Home. They left into the night, disappearing down the street. Klaus watched from the glass doors until they vanished around the corner. His chest felt lighter than it had in years. But behind a pillar near the entrance, Valeria had been watching everything. Her nails dug into her palms. Klaus smiling, Rosanna glowing, Alice laughing. It was unbearable. She whispered under her breath, her eyes sharp with jealousy. This ends now. Valeria barely slept that night. Images of Klaus smiling at Rosanna, of Alice hugging him, played over and over in her mind. She had spent days preparing herself for his arrival, new perfume, tighter hairstyles, endless attempts at charm. Yet he barely noticed her. And then one dinner with a maid, and his eyes lit up. No, she would not allow it. By morning, she was ready. Sitting in her office, she picked up the phone. Hello, Marcia?
Ites Valeria from the Imperador Hotel.
Do you know a young woman named Rosanna? Lives in your neighborhood. Marcia, famous for gossip, worked at the local clinic. She laughed. Of course, the maid with the little girl had her too young. The father ran away, never came back, left her struggling. Valeria smiled coldly. And school? Did she study? She was smart, one of the best, but dropped out when the baby came. People always said she thought she was too good for the neighborhood, always reading, always in the library. Kind of stuck up. Perfect. Valeria had enough. She thanked Marcia sweetly and hung up. That afternoon, she found Klaus reading in the lobby. She approached with her best expression of concern. Mr. Hoffman, may I have a private word? It's a delicate matter. Curious, Klaus followed her into the office. Valeria lowered her voice. It's about one of our maids, Rosanna. Klaus stiffened slightly. What about her? Valeria sighed theatrically. It's uncomfortable, but I must protect our guests. She has a pattern. She approaches wealthy clients, usually foreigners, with the same strategy. A sad story, dreams unfinished, always making herself look vulnerable. Some guests have even felt pressured to give her money or help her find jobs. Klaus's brow furrowed. The Rosanna he had met was shy, careful, almost afraid to talk to him. Yet the details sounded precise. Are you sure? Unfortunately, yes. I've seen it myself. She's clever. She uses that German she learned to get close. But please, sir, be careful. These things can become messy. Klaus left the office unsettled. Could it be true? Was the gentle, intelligent woman he had spoken to only acting? He remembered her glowing eyes when she spoke of Gerda, the tenderness with Alice. But Valeria's warning echoed in his mind. It's always the same story. That evening, he passed Rosanna in the hallway. She smiled softly, lifting a hand in greeting. For the first time, he hesitated before returning the gesture. Her smile faltered. Rosanna felt a chill in her stomach. Something had changed. The next days grew worse. Valeria, always lurking, found subtle ways to drive the knife deeper. In the elevator, she whispered, Mr. Hoffman. Just yesterday she was seen chatting too long in another German guest's room. Always the same tactic. At breakfast she leaned close. She mentioned to staff she dreams of visiting Germany. Don't be surprised if she starts asking you for favors. Each time Klaus tried to dismiss it. But the seed of doubt had been planted. Meanwhile, Rosanna noticed his distance. The warmth of their dinner was gone. When their eyes met, he looked away. When Alice asked about him, Rosanna forced a smile she didn't feel. On Wednesday, Valeria struck harder. She cornered Klaus outside the restaurant. One more thing. Objects have gone missing from rooms she cleaned. Watches, jewelry, small amounts of cash. Nothing large enough to make a scandal, but always when Rosanna was on duty. We can't prove it. But the pattern is there. Klaus's stomach twisted. Are you certain? I wouldn't dare bring this up if I wasn't. I only want to protect you, sir. She may seem innocent, but appearances deceive. That night, Klaus lay awake in the presidential suite. He remembered Rosanna's trembling voice, her whispered German, the way Alice leaned on her arm, safe and happy. Was all of it calculated? A trap for sympathy? Or had he been too eager to believe in her honesty? Down in the service quarters, Rosanna sat with Julia during break. Her hands shook as she held her coffee. Ju, something's wrong. He's avoiding me. He barely looks at me anymore. Julia frowned. You didn't do anything, Ro. Someone must have told him something. Rosanna's chest tightened. Only one person came to mind. And upstairs, in her office, Valeria allowed herself a smile. The web was tightening. Soon, Rosanna would be out of the picture completely. The days that followed were heavy, like a storm that refused to break. Rosanna felt it every time Klaus walked past her. Before, his eyes had lingered, curious, almost warm. Now they slid away quickly, as though she were invisible. When he did speak, his words were short, polite, stripped of the gentle interest he once carried. At first, Rosanna thought it was her imagination. Maybe he was simply busy, weighed down by business. But the silence grew louder, the distance colder. One evening, while changing sheets in a standard room, she overheard two receptionists whispering. "Did you hear what Valeria said? That Rosanna is trying to seduce the German guest." "Really? She doesn't seem like the type." "That's the trick. She acts innocent. But apparently, she's done it before." The words cut deeper than knives. Rosanna dropped the pillowcase she was holding, her heart racing. Lies. They were lies. But no one would believe her over Valeria. That night, at home, Alice noticed her mother's silence. "Mom, why are you sad?" Rosanna forced a smile. "I'm not, Querida. Just tired." But Alice wasn't convinced. She wrapped her arms around Rosanna's waist. "It's because of Mr. Klaus, isn't it?" Rosanna froze. "What makes you say that?" Alice shrugged. "You used to smile when you talked about him. Now you don't." Tears burned Rosanna's eyes. She hugged her daughter tightly, burying her face in Alice's hair. "Some things are too complicated, meu amor." At the hotel, Klaus wrestled with his own doubts. He remembered Rosanna's eyes, filled with sincerity when she spoke about Gerda. He remembered Alice's laughter, the way she had hugged him without hesitation. But Valeria's voice echoed louder. "She has a pattern. She uses her story. She steals from guests." He told himself he was being cautious, protecting himself. But deep down, he felt the sting of betrayal, though he wasn't even sure betrayal had happened. By Friday, the tension reached its peak. Rosanna entered the suite to clean while Klaus was on a call. He didn't look at her once. She straightened the bed, polished the desk, her hands trembling. As she turned to leave, she whispered, barely audible, "If I've done something wrong, I'm sorry." Klaus froze mid-sentence, his eyes flicking to her. For a moment he wanted to ask, to demand the truth. But fear held him back. He turned away, pretending to focus on his papers. Rosanna left with tears stinging her eyes. Later that day, in the laundry room, Julia found her crying quietly between stacks of towels. "Ro, what happened?" Rosanna shook her head. "I don't know. He doesn't trust me anymore. Someone's poisoned his mind." Julia's jaw tightened. "Valeria." Rosanna looked up, startled. "How do you know?" Julia hesitated. Then she pulled her phone from her pocket. "I shouldn't tell you this, but yesterday I overheard her. She was talking to Marcia on the phone, digging up your past. And then she went straight to Hoffman's office. She's spreading lies about you." Rosanna's breath caught. Anger and despair twisted inside her. "Why? What have I ever done to her?" "You don't need to. She can't stand seeing you noticed, especially by someone like him." For the first time, Rosanna felt something shift inside her. Pain gave way to a flicker of defiance. She had been silent for too long, swallowing humiliation, hiding her worth. But this time, the lies threatened not only her dignity, they threatened the fragile hope she had begun to build with Klaus, and the future Alice deserved. She wiped her tears and stood tall. "If she wants war, she'll have it." Julia gripped her arm. "Careful, Ro. Valeria plays dirty. But I'm with you." Meanwhile, in his suite, Klaus stared at the book on his desk, Der Kleine Prinz. He picked it up, ran his fingers across the cover. He remembered Rosanna's voice reading in German, trembling yet steady. His chest tightened. What if he had been wrong? Saturday morning brought heavy rain. Water streaked down the tall windows of the lobby, blurring the city outside. Rosanna pushed her cleaning cart slowly, her mind racing with Julia's words. "Valeria is spreading lies. She's poisoning him against you." For years Rosanna had stayed silent, enduring humiliation to keep her job. But this was different. This wasn't just about her. It was about Alice's future. She couldn't let Valeria destroy the one chance that life had given her. Julia found her in the break room, determined. "I've been thinking, Ro. We can prove she's lying." Rosanna frowned. "How?" Julia leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Valeria uses the hotel phone for gossip. The calls are logged. If she really called Marcia like I heard, it'll be there. We just need to access the records." Rosanna's eyes widened. "That's dangerous." "So is letting her ruin you. Trust me." That afternoon, while Valeria was busy in a meeting, Julia sneaked into the administration office. Her hands shook as she searched the records, heart pounding with fear. And there it was, a call made 3 days earlier, exactly the time she had overheard. Marcia's number, written clearly. She snapped a quick photo on her phone and sent it to Rosanna. Rosanna stared at the evidence. Relief and anger flooded her chest. "Now I have proof." That evening, Klaus sat alone in the restaurant, nursing a glass of wine. He looked tired, distant. Rosanna approached cautiously, her heart thundering. "Mr. Hoffman, may I speak with you?" He hesitated, then nodded. She sat across from him, clutching her phone like a shield. "I know you've been told things about me, that I manipulate guests, that I steal, that I use my story for pity." Klaus's eyes flickered. He opened his mouth, but she continued, her voice steady. "It's not true, and I can prove who's behind it." She showed him the photo, the phone log, the call to Marcia. Her hand trembled as she explained. "Valeria called someone from my neighborhood, digging up pieces of my past. Then she twisted them into lies. She's the one poisoning you against me." Klaus studied the screen, then looked at her. His chest tightened. The sincerity in her eyes was undeniable. And deep down, he realized he had known all along. Rosanna's kindness, her humility, her intelligence were real. But guilt weighed heavy. He had doubted her, turned away when she needed trust the most. "Rosanna," his voice was low. "Why didn't you defend yourself earlier?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Because people like me are never believed. A maid accusing a manager? Who would listen?" Silence stretched between them. Rain tapped softly against the glass. Finally, Klaus reached across the table, his hand hovering for a moment before resting gently over hers. "I believe you." Rosanna's breath caught. Before either of them could say more, Valeria's voice rang out behind them. "What is going on here?" She stood near the entrance, arms crossed, eyes flashing with fury. She had expected Rosanna to be shrinking in shame, not sitting confidently across from the hotel's most important guest. Rosanna turned to her, her voice steady for the first time in years. "What's going on, Valeria, is that your lies are finished." The restaurant fell silent. Staff nearby froze, sensing the tension. Klaus rose slowly, his gaze hard on the manager. "We'll discuss this tomorrow, Ms. Valeria, in my office, with the general manager present." Valeria paled, her jaw tightening. For the first time, her power seemed fragile. Rosanna stood, taking Alice's hand as the girl approached from the hallway. She felt lighter, freer. For once, she wasn't hiding. And Klaus, watching mother and daughter leave together, knew the truth had finally begun to surface. The next morning, the air in the Hotel Imperator was thick with tension. Staff whispered in corners, sensing something was about to change. Valeria walked briskly through the lobby, chin high, her usual mask of control in place. But inside, her stomach churned. Klaus's words from last night echoed in her mind. With the general manager present, she couldn't afford to lose. At 9 sharp, Klaus entered the conference room on the top floor. His suit was impeccable, but his face was stern, colder than anyone had seen before. Behind him came Mr. Almeida, the hotel's general manager, a man known for fairness but also for a sharp intolerance of scandal. Valeria was already seated, papers neatly stacked in front of her. Rosanna stood by the door, clutching her phone tightly. Julia was beside her, offering silent support. Almeida cleared his throat. "We are here to resolve an internal matter. Mr. Hoffman has raised concerns about staff conduct. Let us proceed." Klaus leaned forward. "Over the past week, I was repeatedly told that Ms. Rosanna attempted to manipulate me, that she pursued inappropriate relationships with guests, even that she stole from rooms she cleaned. These accusations came from one source, Ms. Valeria." Valeria's face remained composed, though her palms sweated. "I only reported what I believed to be true. My responsibility is to protect the hotel and its guests." Rosanna stepped forward, her voice trembling but clear. "With respect, sir, those are lies, and I can prove it." She placed her phone on the table, showing the call log photo. "Here. 3 days ago, Valeria used the hotel line to call someone from my old neighborhood, searching for gossip about my past. After that, she began spreading rumors." Almeida examined the photo carefully, then looked at Valeria. "Is this accurate?" Valeria hesitated. I make many calls in the course of work." "Answer the question," Almeida interrupted sharply. Her voice cracked. "Yes, I called, but only to verify suspicions." Klaus's eyes hardened.
Suspicions.
"Or jealousy." The words landed like a slap. Murmurs rose among the few staff present at the back of the room. Valeria's composure shattered. She turned on Rosanna, her voice rising. "Don't act innocent. You've been flaunting your German, your tragic story, parading your daughter." Almeida's hand struck the table. "Enough. This is unacceptable conduct from a manager of this establishment." The silence was crushing. Almeida continued, his voice firm. "Effective immediately, Ms. Valeria, you are suspended. A full investigation will follow. Your behavior has endangered the reputation of this hotel." Valeria's face drained of color. For years she had ruled with fear untouchable. Now, stripped of authority, she looked smaller than Rosanna had ever seen her. She gathered her papers with shaking hands, glaring at Rosanna one last time before storming out. When the door closed, Almeida turned to Rosanna. "You showed courage today. I will ensure your record reflects this." Rosanna's knees nearly buckled. Julia squeezed her hand, whispering, "You did it." Klaus stood, his gaze fixed on Rosanna. For the first time in days, there was no doubt in his eyes, only regret and something softer, deeper. "I owe you an apology. I let lies cloud my judgment." Rosanna swallowed hard, emotions colliding, relief, vindication, exhaustion. She nodded. "You believed what anyone would. People like me. We're easy targets." Klaus shook his head. "Not anymore. Not for me." For Rosanna, it felt like a door opening, one she had long thought locked forever. And as she left the conference room with Julia by her side, the weight on her chest finally began to lift. But deep inside, she knew this was not the end. Valeria would not forgive easily. And the path ahead, between her and Klaus, between survival and hope, was only beginning. The week after Valeria's suspension felt like sunlight breaking through after a storm. The staff walked with lighter steps, no longer fearing the sharp crack of her heels in the hallway. For Rosanna, the change was deeper, like breathing freely after years underwater. Yet inside, she carried a mixture of relief and unease. Valeria might be gone, but her shadow lingered. And then there was Klaus. He sought her out 2 days later, not in the grandeur of the suite or the polished restaurant, but outside the hotel on a quiet evening. Rosanna was waiting for the bus, Alice at her side with a school bag nearly bigger than her small frame. Klaus approached, hands in his pockets, his expression cautious but warm. "May I offer you both a ride?" Alice's eyes lit up. "In your car?" Klaus chuckled. "Yes, in my car." Rosanna hesitated. Years of pride and habit made her want to refuse. but Alice tugged her arm, pleading. Finally, she nodded. Just this once. Inside the sleek black sedan, Alice leaned forward, fascinated by the leather seats and glowing dashboard. Klaus drove slowly, asking about her school, her favorite subjects, her dreams. I want to be a doctor, Alice declared proudly. A doctor, Klaus smiled. That's a wonderful dream. Rosanna listened quietly, her chest swelling with both pride and fear. She wanted that future for Alice, but every day felt like a battle to keep it possible. When they reached her neighborhood, Klaus slowed, taking in the cracked sidewalks, the dim streetlights, the paint peeling from the apartment blocks. He glanced at Rosanna, seeing the quiet shame in her eyes. May I walk you up? She wanted to say no, to protect the fragile dignity she carried in this place. But his sincerity disarmed her. If you wish. Inside the small apartment, Klaus noticed the worn furniture, the careful neatness. A vase with one artificial flower stood on the table. Books lined a single shelf, their spines bent from years of reading. Alice dropped her bag and dashed to the kitchen. Mom, can I show him the picture I drew? Rosanna nodded, cheeks warm. She busied herself preparing coffee, though the old kettle whistled weakly and the cups were chipped. Klaus studied the shelf. Goethe, Schiller, a German-Portuguese dictionary falling apart from use. He picked it up gently, almost reverently. You kept all this. Rosanna's voice was soft. They're all I have left from the girl I used to be. Klaus turned to her, something stirring in his chest. You haven't lost her. She's still here. Her eyes met his, uncertain but touched. Alice returned, holding a drawing of a doctor with a stethoscope. She pointed. That's me, and that's Mom, and that's. She hesitated, then added with a grin. Maybe you. Klaus laughed, warmth spreading through him. Rosanna blushed deeply, but Alice's innocence made it impossible to scold. As the night grew late, Klaus stood to leave. At the door he paused. Rosanna, you're stronger than anyone I've met. I want to help you, not out of pity, but because you deserve more. Her throat tightened. Years of humiliation told her not to believe, not to hope. But the sincerity in his voice was undeniable. I don't want charity, she whispered. It's not charity, Klaus said firmly. It's trust, and maybe something more. Silence filled the small room. The rain outside tapped gently against the window. Alice had already curled up on the couch, half asleep, her drawing still in her hand. Rosanna lowered her gaze, a fragile smile forming. Then we'll see. Klaus left into the night, his heart lighter than it had been in years. For the first time, Rosanna allowed herself to imagine a different future, not just survival, but love. Months passed, and life at the Hotel Imperator changed. Without Valeria's shadow, the staff breathed easier, respect replacing fear. A new manager was hired, strict but fair, and Rosanna finally worked without humiliation pressing down on her shoulders. Yet the greatest change was outside the hotel. Klaus kept returning to Sao Paulo, his business becoming the perfect excuse. But the truth was simpler. He wanted to be near Rosanna and Alice. What began as small gestures, rides home, books left quietly on her doorstep, grew into something undeniable. On weekends, he invited them to parks, museums, even the zoo. Alice adored him, asking endless questions in her curious way. And Rosanna, though cautious, found herself smiling more than she had in years. The walls she had built to protect herself began to crumble. One Sunday afternoon, they sat in Ibirapura Park, sunlight spilling through the trees. Alice chased pigeons nearby while Rosanna and Klaus shared a bench. You've changed me, Klaus said quietly. She looked at him, puzzled. How? For years, I lived only for contracts, meetings, money. Everything was numbers, profit. Then I met you. You reminded me that people matter more, that love matters more. Rosanna's heart raced. She wanted to believe, but doubt lingered. Klaus, men like you don't end up with women like me. I'm just... He reached for her hand, firm but gentle. Don't say that. You are everything. Strong, intelligent, full of dignity even when the world tried to take it from you. And Alice, she is a gift. You both are. Tears filled her eyes. She had waited so long to be seen, truly seen. That evening, when they returned to her small apartment, Klaus surprised her with a box. Inside was a set of books, classic German literature, beautifully bound. On the first page of Der Kleine Prinz, he had written in careful Portuguese, "To Rosanna and Alice, may your dreams never be invisible again." She pressed the book to her chest, unable to speak. Alice clapped her hands with joy. "He's like family now, Mom." Rosanna met Klaus's gaze, and this time she didn't look away. Weeks later, Klaus made a decision. He wanted Rosanna and Alice not just as part of his visits, but as part of his life. He arranged a scholarship for Alice at one of the best schools in Sao Paulo, and for Rosanna, a position at the cultural center his company funded, teaching German to underprivileged children. When he told her, she gasped. "Klaus, I don't deserve all this." He smiled softly. "You deserve more than you ever imagined." And for the first time, she believed it. The three of them built a rhythm, dinners at home, afternoons at the library, evenings filled with laughter. The city no longer felt like a battlefield of survival. For Rosanna, it became a place of rebirth. As for Valeria, she disappeared from their lives. Rumors spread that she had tried her luck at another hotel, only to be dismissed again for her cruelty. She was a ghost of the past, powerless now. One night, as they walked along Paulista Avenue under the glow of city lights, Klaus stopped, turned to Rosanna, and took her hands. "I don't want to be just a guest in your life anymore. I want to be your partner. For you, for Alice, for all the days to come." Rosanna's breath caught. The woman who had once been humiliated in a hotel lobby, who had hidden her dreams in silence, now stood with a man who saw her fully, who loved her not in spite of her past, but because of the strength it had forged. She smiled through tears. "Then stay with us." Alice squeezed both their hands, her voice bright and certain. "Finally, now we're a family." The city roared around them, cars, buses, neon lights, but for Rosanna, the noise faded. All she felt was the warmth of Klaus's hand, the hope in Alice's eyes, and the certainty that her suffering had led her here. To love, to dignity, to a future she could finally believe in. And for the first time in years, Rosanna lifted her head high. So, what did you think of Rosanna's journey? From invisible maid to a woman who faced lies, humiliation, and still found her voice, and maybe even love. If you had lived through what she did, would you have had the same courage? Let me know in the comments. What moment hit you the hardest? The one that made you hold your breath, or maybe even tear up? And of course, from 0 to 10, what rating does this story deserve? If you want more stories like this, full of twists, heart, and that cinematic feeling, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell, because the next story might just surprise you even more.